Well, of course, we're going to begin here. Breaking news. Nikki Haley is expected to suspend her presidential campaign. It follows a brutal Super Tuesday wipeout. She's set to deliver remarks in South Carolina at 10 a.m. Eastern. And of course, when that begins, we're going to go there live for you. The former South Carolina governor won just one Super Tuesday state, Vermont. Donald Trump easily swept through the other races, netting an additional 777 delegates. On the other side of the aisle, President Biden won the Democrat Super Tuesday contest. Most of them, almost all of them. Last night's results set the stage for a Biden versus Trump rematch. So for more on the end of Nikki Haley's White House bid, let's bring in CBS News campaign reporter Nidia Cavazos. So Nidia, thanks for joining us. What are you learning from Nikki Haley's campaign?
Good morning, Anne-Marie. Ever since we learned about this, that Nikki Haley will be suspending her presidential campaign, I have been able to talk to some of the people that are close to Haley, as well as her staff, her volunteers. And what they've been saying is that they're very proud of Haley, the work that they've been able to do as a team. They're not necessarily, sad about the outcome, although they wish it was a different case. They're very satisfied with the work they've done. And this is also sort of the tone that, they were taking on just yesterday, even as the results were coming in. And we were seeing no win whatsoever for Haley, aside from, of course, Vermont, which came later on during the evening. But this is the message they've been saying. And, according to some of the sources familiar with this matter, we're going to be expecting Haley to touch on, former President Donald Trump, but she will not be endorsing him. Instead, she's going to be calling on Donald Trump to unite the Republican Party and to be able to gather the support from Haley's voters. And by this, she says change is needed. So we'll be hearing those remarks in just a few minutes, where we are standing outside of the venue where this is going to be taking place.
So then what does that mean, Nidia? Does that mean that Nikki Haley's not going to be quiet for the rest of this election season?
She's definitely not leaving without, just giving former President Donald Trump his endorsement. That's not going to be happening today. And as far as what's next to her political career, it's unclear at this very minute. But of course, we're going to be listening to her remarks and seeing what exactly is next for her. But Haley's message throughout the campaign trail has been very much this, that it's been a warning for Donald Trump that he cannot win in the presidency without her 40% of the share of voters that she would say that she was able to gain in New Hampshire and in her home state of South Carolina. And to her crowd, she had also been giving, this message, telling them that if the country needed to move on from, the sinking ship, and she would often say this ship has a hole and that hole is Donald Trump, then she was ready to be that alternative. But of course, we know this is no longer the case, and we're now moving on to this general election mode where it's going to be Trump and Biden rematch in November. So we'll be, waiting for her remarks and see what's next for her and what else will she add into this conversation.
All right, Nidia, thank you very much. So for more analysis, I want to bring in our political panel. Hogan Gidley served as the White House Principal Deputy Press Secretary during the Trump administration and is the former National Press Secretary on the Trump campaign. And Ashley Etienne is a CBS News political contributor and former communications director to Vice President Harris. Thank you so much for joining us. It's nice to have you guys right here in the studio, flesh and blood.
Good morning.
So Hogan, I'm going to start with you, and we're going to talk about the breaking news. Nikki Haley suspending her campaign. We knew that she was going to reassess things after Super Tuesday. I also understand some major donors had already kind of pulled funding. I'm sure that contributed to her decision. What does her future look like? Because Donald Trump says it's too late to get on the Trump train.
Well, it's really up to her. This kind of exercise in futility went on for a long time. A lot of people on the right were angry at her. A lot of people on the left were praising her because she was giving Joe Biden a lot of fodder to use against Donald Trump. So it depends on what she wants to do. Obviously, the indications are from this reporting that she's not going to endorse today. She's going to hold back on that. And she's going to ask for Donald Trump to come across and try to get some of her voters, which makes sense. But she's going to have to do her side, her part in that as well. It makes sense that she's going to kind of take this pause and reassess because obviously she wasn't winning any states. Her unpopularity on the right, though, is palpable from the people I've spoken with, not just on the Trump side, but others out there with the way she ran the campaign. But these things are always bloody. They're always brutal. They're always bare knuckle. And people from South Carolina, like myself, she was my governor. We understand that more than most because every 4 years we go kind of through this process. But right now, it's really up to her. If she wants to just serve on boards, if she wants to get a TV contract, then she's, kind of going to be a thorn in the side. If she wants to get on board and kind of get her next step in politics prepared, then potentially she comes out full-throated for Trump at some point.
I clearly don't agree with that characterization, though,
No, I think we need to give Nikki Haley a little more credit here. I mean, I think she achieved exactly what I think she was trying to, which is to demonstrate Donald Trump's vulnerabilities, to make the case that he's not in a position and will not be Joe Biden in November. And she did that, right? Even this past, even yesterday, she did very well in states that are going to make the difference. Michigan, Virginia, North Carolina, and with voters that are going to be deciding the election, suburban voters, moderates, disaffected Republicans. So from my perspective, I would really hope that she takes her own advice and becomes courageous and decides not to drop out. Maybe she can run third party. Maybe she can peel off votes from both of these guys. If she's convicted that these two should not be in the Oval Office and should not occupy the Oval Office, stay in the fight. But she deserves some credit. She's the only person, and I'm glad she's a woman, that took on Donald Trump aggressively and ran through the tape.
I mean, she raised an awful lot of money. She still got a lot of votes, and she raised a ton of money, which means that there were people that, even when this looked like a lost cause, were willing to invest in her because they disliked Donald Trump that much. That being said, some people have wondered whether or not if she continued in the race, if she would have sort of wooed some Biden voters. I don't know, because it seemed to me that when people who were Nikki Haley supporters talked, they disliked President Biden as much as they disliked Donald Trump. But what do you think? Now we've got a group of voters without a candidate. Could President Biden woo them?
Well, I mean, the campaign sent out a memo this morning and said that they're aggressively going to go after these undecided voters. So their eye is like laser-like focus on these voters and trying to figure out how they can bring them on. And I think that they believe that they have the advantage because the issues are on their side. Abortion is a gift that keeps on giving for Democrats. He's got an incredible record that he can run on. 15 million jobs created, unemployment at record low, bipartisan bills from infrastructure to guns, that people that fall into that category, they appreciate that. That's what they want. To your point, they want a sense of normalcy. They want to know that government is working, and he's demonstrated that. So I think they believe that they have the best shot at going after those voters. And also, I would add, is because those voters are turned off by Donald Trump. And the one thing that's not going to change and that's going to stay consistent, and that's Donald Trump.
But they are still Republicans, Hogan. I want to ask you about Donald Trump's speech after Super Tuesday. I mean, it really felt to me like a combination of what he said after he was sworn in as president, the sort of dark, dreary, only I can fix America kind of imagery. And I got to tell you, the feeling that I had was, are we doing this again? I mean, it just sounded sort of like warmed over old stuff. Well, and, Ashley talked about Biden running on a record. So is President Trump.
No question. And that's the interesting thing about this race. Obviously, I disagree with everything she just said. But the two people running for president, one is currently in the White House. One was president. These two records butt up against each other. And while Republicans used to point back to Reagan and say, look at all these successes back in the 80s, this was just a couple of years ago where we had record-setting success. And so for the voters out there, and Ashley hit on this, they do care about things other than just abortion and other than just January 6th. They do care about the border. What's interesting about that is what got him basically into the White House in 2016 was a destructive immigration policy along the southern border. Now we're experiencing the exact same thing. This could catapult him to the White House again. And a majority of the American people don't like where Biden's taking us on inflation, don't like where he's taking us on the economy. $11,400 you need to make more than you did when Joe Biden was first elected just to make the ends meet that you could do under President Trump for much less. People understand that. The interest rates are at 22-year highs. You're spending more money percentage-wise in your paycheck now to buy food. It's the largest amount since the early 90s. Right. So people understand these policies matter. These policies affect everything in your life. And the campaign is going to be about this. Whose policies made your life better? Whose policies made your life worse?
Ashley, you know, this is being characterized as a rematch, but we were talking a little bit before, and I thought rematch is simplifying this. It's not a rematch. It's 4 years later. The country is different. Part of President Biden's appeal 4 years ago was we just wanted normal. Bring us back to normal. That's not going to be good enough now. What do you think the president's appeal will be this time around if he wants to spend another 4 years in the White House? You know, Hogan identified what he considers failures of the administration. What does the president have to sell?
I think he's going to continue to draw this contrast with Donald Trump. And I'm going to respectfully disagree with Hogan. I mean, when Donald Trump was the president, longest shutdown in American history, cost taxpayers $11 trillion, record unemployment, 2 million women left the workforce because of COVID, 1 million Americans died from COVID. So that was, you know, I was talking to Anthony Saldano, and he made this point that what he's seeing in the polling is that people are forgetting about the pandemic period of Donald Trump's tenure. So I think what Joe Biden's going to do is remind you about what life was like, and not just by the numbers, but how you felt. We all felt anxious. I felt like it was an existential threat. I mean, and I'm not alone in that in terms of his presidency. So he's going to draw that contrast. And here's the other thing. I think the State of the Union is a big platform. I think that's where he's going to lay it out. He's going to say, listen, you've got the choice between these two, a Republican Party that is not delivering on closing the border. They walked away from a bipartisan deal. They're not taking any actions to support our allies at war, and they've done nothing in the House to create jobs. And then you've got a former president on top of that is talking about crash and burn, and to your point, dark. You know, our country is dark and in total disarray, which is not true. So that's what he's going to do, and then he's going to also remind people, because this is his last State of the Union before he runs, the accomplishments he's achieved while in office.
And I have more questions for you guys, but we have to go for now. I know we'll have you on again, and it's going to be a long way till November. Hogan, Ashley, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.